Guy de Maupassant A Walk. When Uncle Lera, the bookkeeper for the trading house Labuse and Company, left the office, he was momentarily blinded by the glow of the setting sun. All day he had worked by the yellow light of a gas jet in the back room of the office, which looked out onto a courtyard, deep and narrow as a well. The little room where he had spent his days for 40 years was so dark that even at the height of summer, one could manage without a light only between 11 and 3. It was perpetually gloomy, damp, and cool there, and from the cramped, grave-like courtyard, the smell of mold and the stench of a garbage pit seeped through the window. For 40 years in a row, Monsieur Lera had arrived at this dungeon by 8 in the morning. He would sit there until 7 in the evening, bent over his ledgers, working with the diligence of a conscientious clerk. He had started at 1,500 francs a year and now earned 3,000. He had remained a bachelor because his meager earnings did not allow him to start a family. Having known few joys in life, he did not aspire to much. However, sometimes, worn out by the monotonous and incessant labor, he would voice a platonic wish. Dear God, if only I had an income of 5,000 livres, then I would live for my own pleasure. But he never got to live for his own pleasure, for he never had anything but his monthly salary. His life had passed without any events, without upheavals, and almost without hope. The narrowness of his aspirations had robbed him of the capacity to dream, inherent to every human being. At 21, he had entered the trading house Labuse and Company. He had never changed his place of employment since. In 1856, his father died, and then in 1859, his mother. And after that, no other incidents occurred in his life, except that in 1868 he had to move to another apartment because his landlord decided to raise the rent. Every day, precisely at 6 in the morning, he would jump out of bed to the deafening ring of an alarm clock, which sounded like the grinding of a chain being unwound. Though twice the clock had broken, in 1866 and in 1874, and he never did figure out why. He would dress, make his bed, sweep the floor, and dust the armchair and the chest of drawers. All of this took him an hour and a half. Then he would leave the house, buy a roll at Lagour's bakery, where in his memory 11 owners had changed hands while the sign remained the same, and set off on his way, eating his roll as he walked. His entire existence unfolded in that dark and cramped office, where even the wallpaper had never been changed. He had come there as a young man, as an assistant to Monsieur Brument, with the hope of one day taking his place. He got that place and expected nothing more thereafter. The entire harvest of memories that others gather over a lifetime. Unexpected incidents, tender or tragic love affairs, travels and adventures, all the chances of a bachelor's existence. All of this remained foreign to him. The days, weeks, months, seasons, whole years resembled one another. Every day, at the same hour, he would rise, leave, appear at the office, have breakfast, leave, have dinner, and go to bed, and nothing ever disrupted the measured monotony of the same actions, the same events, the same thoughts. Before, he used to examine his blonde mustache and curly hair in the small round mirror left by his predecessor. Now, every evening before leaving, he would gaze into the same mirror at his graying mustache and balding head. 40 years had passed, long and swift, empty as a day of sorrow, and as alike as the hours of a sleepless night. 40 years from which nothing remained, not a single memory, not even a sorrowful one, since his parents had died. On this day, Monsieur Lera paused on the threshold, dazzled by the brilliance of the setting sun, and instead of heading home, He felt a desire to take a short walk before dinner. This happened to him at most 4 or 5 times a year. He went out onto the boulevards, where a stream of people flowed under the greening trees. It was a spring evening, one of the first warm and gentle evenings that stir the heart with a thirst for life. Monsieur Lera walked with a bouncy, old man's gait. He walked with a cheerful spark in his eyes, happy with the general joy, and reveled in the warmth diffused in the air. Turning onto the Champs-Élysées, he continued on his way, and a light breeze carried to him the invigorating breath of youth. The entire sky was ablaze, and the dark mass of the Arc de Triomphe stood out against the bright horizon like a colossus surviving amid a conflagration. Approaching the giant monument, the old bookkeeper felt hungry and went into a bistro to have dinner. Seated at a table set out on the sidewalk in front of the restaurant, he was served a leg of lamb, salad, and asparagus. Monsieur Lera dined with a pleasure he had long denied himself. He washed down the brie cheese with half a bottle of fine Bordeaux, then ordered a cup of coffee, which was a rarity for him, and finished with a small glass of brandy. Having paid, he was in excellent spirits, feeling very spry and even slightly tipsy. He thought to himself, "What a marvelous evening! I think I'll walk as far as the Bois de Boulogne. It will refresh me." And he walked on. A little tune, which a neighbor woman used to hum long ago, stubbornly echoed in his head. The little wood turns green. My sweetheart says, serene, "Come, my pretty stray, beneath the leaves and play." He hummed it endlessly, starting it over and over again. Night had fallen over Paris. The breeze had died down, and the air was as warm as in a hothouse. Monsieur Lera strolled along an avenue of the Bois de Boulogne, watching the passing hackney carriages. They approached one after another, lighting the way with the gleam of their lamp-like eyes, and for a moment he would glimpse an embracing couple inside, a woman in a light dress and a man in dark clothing. It was an endless procession of lovers, flowing under a sultry, starry sky. New couples kept appearing and drifting past, reclining in the carriages, silently clinging to one another as if in a delirium, gripped by a lover's fever, trembling with anticipation of imminent embraces. In the stifling twilight, kisses seemed to flutter and hover in the air. A tender languor saturated the atmosphere and weighed upon his chest. Waves of scorching passion radiated from these entwined pairs, from these people intoxicated by a single craving, a single thought. All these carriages, harboring so much voluptuous bliss, seemed to leave in their wake a subtle and stirring fragrance. Finally, feeling somewhat tired, Monsieur Lera sat down on a bench and continued to watch the string of cabs with their love-languid pairs. And almost immediately, a woman approached and settled beside him. "Hello, dear," she said. He did not respond. She continued, "Come now, let me be nice to you, darling. You'll see, I could be very sweet." He muttered, "You have mistaken me for someone else, madam." She took his arm. "Now, don't be silly, listen." He stood up and walked away, his heart aching. But he had not gone 100 steps before another woman addressed him. "Care to sit with me a while, my handsome fellow?" He asked her, "Why do you ply this trade?" She planted herself before him and replied in an altered voice, hoarse and angry, "Damn it all, certainly not for my own amusement." He pressed gently, "Then what forces you to?" She grumbled, "A body's got to live, that's what." And she moved off, humming. Monsieur Lera felt a profound unease. Other women passed by, calling out to him, soliciting him. It seemed as if something dark, something inexpressibly oppressive, had descended upon his soul. He sat down on a bench again. The carriages continued to glide past before him. I should not have come here, he thought. Now I don't know what's come over me. I am utterly distraught. And he began to ponder all this love, venal or sincere, all these kisses, bought or passionate, that flickered before his eyes like images in a kaleidoscope. Love? He had known nothing of it. In all his life, there had been 2 or 3 women, chance, unexpected encounters, for on his meager means he could allow himself no such luxuries. And he thought of the life he had lived, so unlike the lives of other people, so gloomy, dreary, gray, and empty. Some people are truly born under an unlucky star. And suddenly, it was as if a veil had been torn from his eyes. He saw the full wretchedness, the utter, hopeless poverty of his existence, the poverty of his past, the poverty of his present, the poverty of his future, the coming years of old age, promising to be as joyless as his youth. And he realized that there was nothing ahead, nothing behind, nothing around him, nothing in his heart, nothing anywhere. The carriages kept driving by. Before him, silently embraced couples in the open cabs appeared and vanished. It seemed to him that all of humanity was rushing past, intoxicated with joy, pleasure, happiness, and he alone watched it completely alone. And tomorrow he would be alone too. He would be alone forever, alone as no one else in the world. He rose, took a few steps, and suddenly felt so weary, as if he had just completed a long journey. He sat down again on the nearest bench. What was he waiting for? What was he hoping for? There was nothing ahead of him. He thought how delightful it would be in old age, upon returning home, to see little children prattling. It is good to grow old when you are surrounded by beings who owe you their life, who love you, caress you, who speak to you those naive and tender words that warm the heart and console all sorrows. He remembered his empty room, so neat and so forlorn, where no outsider's foot ever stepped, and despair seized his soul. That little room seemed to him even more pitiful than his cramped office. No one ever visited it. No conversation was ever held within its walls. It was gloomy, silent. No human voice ever sounded there. The walls seemed to absorb something from the people who inhabited them, something of their gait, their faces, their words. Houses inhabited by happy families are brighter than those of the unhappy. His room was as devoid of memories as his life. The thought of returning there alone, of going to bed, of performing once more all the actions he executed every evening, filled him with horror. And as if to get farther away from that gloomy refuge, to postpone the moment of return, he got up and, taking the first path he came upon, plunged into the thick of the wood and sat down on the grass. All around him, above him, everywhere, he could hear a vague rumble, vast and continuous, woven from countless and diverse sounds, a muffled, near and far clamor, a vague and powerful throbbing of life, the breath of Paris, the pulse beat of this living giant. The sun had already risen high and was flooding the Bois de Boulogne with streams of light. A few carriages appeared. Riders trotted gaily by. A couple was strolling slowly down a deserted avenue. Suddenly the young woman, looking up, noticed something dark in the branches. Surprised and alarmed, she raised her hand. "Look, what is that?" Then, with a cry, she fell senseless into her companion's arms, and he had to lay her on the ground. The park keepers were soon summoned, and they cut down from a branch an old man who had hanged himself with his suspenders. It was determined that he had died the previous evening. The papers found on him revealed that he had been a bookkeeper for the trading house Labuse and Company, and that his name was Lera. His death was attributed to suicide, the motives for which remained unexplained. Could it have been a sudden fit of madness?